All right. Well, we are back. UFC Vegas 44 went down Saturday, December 4th from the UFC Apex in Las Vegas. And the event was headlined by a men's bantamweight bout between the number 4 ranked Rob Font as he faced the former UFC featherweight champion and number 5 ranked Jose Aldo. And what can you say? Jose Aldo picked up the win, defeating Rob Font by unanimous decision, cashing as the plus 125 underdog. And I'm here to talk about it with my man, Liam Picks Fights. What is up, everybody? Nice to be back, not only for, another recap show, but also for, coming back from the holiday break. And this was a good one, man. This is just a classic fight night, in the deep night of a Saturday night not on pay-per-view, but just on like a good old ESPN card. This was a good one. And thanks for staying up late with me to break this one down. How'd you do? And what did you think about this one as a card?
Absolutely, my man. It's a pleasure to be here, Al. Thank you very much for having me on. And yeah, it was a tough night for me from a betting perspective, but who could be mad at the slate of fights that we had? It was a really entertaining card. And honestly, a lot of the bets that I made, I feel like I would go back to the well on them. I felt good about the bets going in. And some of them, I feel like kind of just made a bad bet and got to learn from it. Was pretty invested in Brad Riddell, didn't perform to my expectations by example. So I think that there's some lessons to be learned and also, some bad beats. It was kind of a weird card. It felt like Jose Aldo could have pursued a finish a little more aggressively and chose not to. And then he mentions in the post fight, I wanted to prove I could go 5 rounds. Well, yeah, he laid on him for 2 minutes doing nothing at the end. So really made it look like that. And as somebody who had some exposure on the under, the fight doesn't go, that trend continued to bite me. But I do think that, regression is going to come on that front sooner or later. And this seemed like a place where, he basically knocked him out 5 times and submitted him and still couldn't finish him. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, we'll get into it because I was on the same boat with you. I already knew what was going to happen. I had fight goes the distance no in that one at plus money as well. And we'll get into it. There was speaking of which, there was 9 of the 13 fights didn't go the distance. So a flat bet on the fight goes the distance no tonight, 9-4 for plus 5.94 units profit. And then the underdog cashed in 6 of the 13 fights. So the underdog flat bet 6 and 7 for 3.87 units on the money line. So, being contrarian tonight definitely paid off. It was, just talking about, there was also the 4 coin flip fights within like the range of minus 150. Minus 150 is a favorite. And the favorite cash in 3 of the 4 of those. It was just one of those nights where it was like when the odds were close, it seemed like it swayed towards the favorite. But there was a bunch of these, and we'll get into it. The dog came through, and just typical MMA fashion. And the first fight, not really, obviously. It just, for me, it was just a workman performance from Alex Morono here. Cash is a minus 230 favorite, plus 125 by decision. The over cash pretty easily, minus 185. Fight goes the distance, yes. Cash at minus 155. Nothing really nothing out of the ordinary for me. What did you have? What did you think about this one?
Yeah, this was a fight that, I had put a little bit of faith in Mickey Gall here that was probably unwarranted. I had a half unit shot on him at plus 210. So it seemed like I got the best of the line. It had floated around a little bit shorter of a price. I got it at the peak, but, he didn't really fight to a very solid game plan, in my opinion. Kind of just engaged in a tepid, range kickboxing match where he was getting out volumed, and that wasn't really a good path for him to win. My prediction was that he was going to win the fight by first round knockout. I feel like Morono is like really loose with his entries and kind of comes in reckless. And I thought that Gall would be a little sharp early and didn't see the volume or the the precision shots that I had seen in some past fights. So just a weird fight to me. One of the least inspiring on the card, if I'm honest. But the story behind it was nice, about his father being there. That was a really nice story. So credit to Alex Morono. Like you said, workmanlike, but yeah, really nothing to write home about. And they were talking about on the broadcast, giving him a step up in competition. That will be something I'm looking to fade, in all likelihood, with the 3-fight win streak. If I could get the right opponent. Granted, he does have an awkward style. It seems like guys have a tough time adjusting to the weird movements that he's doing. But I feel like somebody with a lot of confidence, a la Chaos Williams, will just see what he's doing is a little bit loopy and a little bit loose, and throw something down the pipe that ends his night early. So that's how I feel about that one.
Yeah, it's funny. Like he has such a sneaky 8-3 record in his last 11 fights. He's just one of those guys. He's come through a couple of times big as an underdog in that run. So he's turned 5.5 units on the decision prop in his last 11 fights. So he's one of these guys. He has that mixture of that awkward style, but also he's got a ton of cardio, and he just uses it in a way that he's very efficient. He doesn't have he has kind of awkward motion, but he doesn't really put his he doesn't really put any type of effort into things that he doesn't have to, as far as grappling and stuff like that. He doesn't really get into those exchanges unless he has to. And the thing is like, it seems like the UFC really does him a favor, because this was another one of those matchups where I thought, if Mickey Gall, he was going to have a small window to win this. And if he didn't do it early, he's just going to end up being goaded into a tit for tat fight, a stand-up fight against, to be honest, a much more sound stand-up fighter in Alex Morono. So to me, I thought this was, I never really like to lay the lumber on a fight goes the distance, but at -155, I thought this was a solid play. And at no point did I think that there was any, going to be any issue there getting out of this one inside the distance. Just not too much of a finisher, Morono, unless it's somebody like Cerrone. But just a good workman-like performance. It's literally the only thing that I wrote down for my notes on this was just Alex Morono, workman-like performance. And to move on to the next fight, this one was super interesting. Chris Curtis cashes as a +270 underdog via second round TKO with punches and knees over Brendan Allen, +500 by TKO, +425 inside the distance. The under cashed at -110. Fight goes the distance, no, -135. And I mean, besides the obvious, just a crazy upset here. But I got to say, there was, I thought Brendan Allen was, I thought he was going to be the chance. I think he was actually the biggest favorite on the card tonight, but I thought this was, I thought, I had a small play on Curtis, so I wasn't overly surprised here. What'd you think about this one?
Yeah, I can't say that I was overly surprised either. And the fight played out just a little bit different than my expectations. I thought it was Allen that was going to be on the other end of this knockout here, because of the height, the reach, which, in tandem, I thought would be a little bit to his benefit. I thought Curtis was going to have to punch up at him. But Curtis, smart move, went to the body, got his hands to come low, and then checked him with the hook in close. And I had, this was one of my bright spots on the card, 0.75 units on the fight to end by KO at +300. So felt pretty good about that bet. Thank you. And I also had 0.45 units on Allen KO at +900. The rest of the market was about +550. So I just felt like that was a stale line and I needed to take advantage. But, overall, my only regret is that when I was first breaking this down, my plan was to bet both guys by KO and then to also bet fight ends by KO. And instead, I just ended up front loading fight ends by KO as my way of covering the Curtis possibility. And so instead of having the +300 and the +480, I just settled with the +300 there. And that's my only regret. But otherwise, yeah, man, it played out relative to expectations. I thought Allen was going to make it a pissing match. I just thought it was something that he might be able to win. And instead, it's Curtis with the power and the precision. I was a little worried for Curtis given the damage he had coming in. You know, his eye was fucked up in his last fight, and I thought he still had like some visible damage on his face. But the guy is a soldier. He's talking about fighting again next weekend. So salute action, man. If he has that kind of plus money distinction by his name again, you know, I'm going to feel like a fool if I don't take advantage, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, and that goes back to something that me and you were talking about off air. It's just like, yeah, if I mean, you know, this is now 2 times for me that I've cashed on him as a big underdog. What's, you know, at this point, why not? Even who you know, who's going to be up against? I can only lose one more unit, right? Like I'm not going to play it stupid and go, you know. So you come in reckless. You just play discipline, and you know Chris Curtis is one of those guys. You're up now, huge plus money if you've bet him, and yeah, I gotta say, I feel like Brendan Allen, with all due respect, might be a little bit broken. I don't know. I couldn't see him being the sizable favorite that he was. It was him and Manel Kopp. And, you know, Manel Kopp is a former Ryzen champion, and he was a minus, almost like opened at a minus 200 and then moved to about a minus 300. Brandon Allen, kind of the opposite, opened at a high level and then kind of Curtis started taking money yesterday and early this morning. And I wasn't surprised. I thought this was I thought Curtis could have easily pulled off the upset here, and I put a fourth of a unit on Curtis. And then another thing that I wanted to mention, something that's happening now in middleweight, 101 fights in the middleweight division since the start of 2020, and the total has now gone to the under 51 of those 101 fights. So almost right down the middle now. So basically, if you're getting under at plus money, under 2.5 rounds at plus money, and even at minus 110, and these lower level middleweight fights in the UFC, I think you got to take it because the bookies aren't lining these fights correctly. This, you know, you shouldn't have been able to get, if you look at it in hindsight, that minus 115, minus 112 on the under in this fight, that seemed like easy pickings to me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I didn't get there with a tracked bet, but when I saw it on the live markets and at the casino today for minus 135, fight doesn't go to decision. I had to get involved there. And I normally opt for the fight doesn't go if there's not a significant difference. It wasn't a huge difference here, about 10, 20 cents. And so I opted for the fight doesn't go. And yeah, man, it was pretty sweat free here. I felt like one way or another, somebody was more likely to get finished in this fight than not. You know,
Yeah,
probably 60+%.
the only reason that I like to track the under and the over is because you kind of get a little bit of a variance with how each book lets to set their lines based on those. You know, they kind of have this weird formula about what a fight goes the distance no is relative to what an under is. You know, so you're kind of able to expose a little bit of that. You know, if you look on a site like Best Fight Odds or whatever, you can see that sometimes the under will be the same price as the fight goes the distance no. So in that sense, yeah, why would I take the under when you can get it for the same price on, you know, 2.5 minutes? It's just one of those things where, like I said, if you're getting plus money on these lower level middleweight fights in the UFC going into 2020, I'm going to continue to talk about this because this is one of those things where you shouldn't have got plus money in that fight for fight goes the distance no, or not plus money, but even in that coin flip range, minus 150 or better. I thought I regret not having a full unit on that one because it just seemed like easy to me. But yeah, we kind of talked about this one a little bit more than we should have. The next one, this is the one that will probably have the most talking points. Clay Guida comes out as a huge underdog here, cashes. as the plus 200 underdog, second round submission. He cashed at plus 1,700 to win by submission, 6-1 odds inside the distance. The under cashed at plus 150, and fight goes distance no at minus 110. And yeah, what can you say? What do you have to say about this one?
Oh, this is the grossest fight on the card for me, by far, in terms of my betting results. I feel like I put my money in a fairly good position. I sniffed out the Leo Santos money line as a bit of a trap spot. You don't really want to invest in 41-year-olds at minus 200, but I felt like this was, a fight that was very winnable for Leo Santos. I felt like he was the better striker. I felt like he was the better grappler. And I thought that he was going to be able to club and sub Clay Guida in the first round. And it looked like he was well on the way to doing that. He drops Clay Guida, has him badly hurt. And, I think some people weren't giving enough credit to the fact that, he had hurt Clay to the body. So he didn't want to start punching him in the head. He was like trying to punch his body over and over and over. And Clay was very badly affected by it. Then he's like, all right, I guess that's not working. So he knees him in the face, knocks his mouth guard out. And still, just Clay Guida, soldier of fortune, never quit on himself. And, I feel like more often than not, I don't want to be a bitter, person here. It's like, it happens that variance goes for and against you. I cashed Grant Dawson plus 1,200 round 3 against Leo Santos last time with like 1 second on the clock. So, variance goes both directions. And I acknowledge that. But yeah, 46 unanswered strikes. I had Santos round 1 at plus 550. I had Santos submission at plus 500. Both of those were small bets. And then I had 0.8 units or 0.8 units on Santos to win inside the distance at plus 220. And again, I felt like all of that was super live. I felt like the rationale played out as expected, just didn't go our way. Congrats, Clay Guida moneyline backers. That was a smart bet.
Yeah, like to me, first of all, I mean, I feel like we could do a whole podcast about this fight because, like, just to me, first of all, when has there ever been? I think this might be the first ever UFC lightweight fight, but Guida isn't officially 40, but he was 39 and 360 1 days, because I believe he turns 40 in like 4 days. So I believe that this is the first ever UFC fight between two men in their 40th birth year ever. So, a UFC lightweight fight between two 40-year-olds, right away, I was just like, if you're telling me that I'm betting on the favorite who's a 41-year-old man against Clay Guida, there's no chance that I would ever do that. And even if, minus 185, it was just, I tweeted it very early this morning. Like, if there could ever be a trap line in MMA, that was the trap line. And it was just so easy to see. Just bet fight goes the distance. No, like that was the way to get out of that variance for me. And that's what I cashed on. And I know there's probably a lot of people that would say, well, it's easy for you to say that, but it's just, it's the way that the market was set up. Like, you're getting fight goes the distance no at plus 130. With all due respect, it's an old man fight. I'd rather use the variance on my side, which ended up working because Guida pulled off the win, right? And against, a high level submission grappler, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in that type of a fight. It doesn't matter how high level your submission grappling is. You're against Clay Guida. The guy has like some of the most, at least in his division, the most fights in the UFC. You're not gonna, you have the window that you have to take him out is so small, and it was just a trap line. And this is another one where I know I see a lot of people that had an issue in this fight because of the non-stoppage. I didn't have a problem with it. It's just, I don't know. I thought that this is going to be a fight that was full of variance because it's a 40-year-old lightweight fight. And just to be honest, I wasn't overly surprised. And yeah, I didn't have a Clay Guida money line bet. I couldn't say that, but I just thought there's no way I'm betting Santos money line. And I thought the best way to go was the fight goes the distance. No, yeah, and Clay Guida now improves to 5-4 in his last 9 fights, and he's turned a profit of 3.4 units on the money line in that stretch. So unbelievable stretch for him. And yeah, what can you say? Any last thoughts about that one?
I had a
Oh,
lotto ticket parlay on this fight. Sorry, I had my mic muted, but
no worries.
it advanced on fight ends by submission at plus 330. So I did think I wanted that little bit of uh room there, like you mentioned. I did think somebody was getting finished here, and I don't put it past anybody to get submitted once they're dog tired. And we've seen evidence in the past that Leo Santos, like past 1.5 rounds, even in fights that are going well for him at this point, starts to show that death gas where anything is possible. And so, yeah, I felt like that was a live possibility. Did add live to the fight doesn't go. But yeah, didn't get it on my tracked record, and trying to give out bets that win for people as well. So unfortunate for me, I did not get in on that. Should have just taken the free money that was there on the fight doesn't go. But I don't know. That kind of scared me too, man. I was like, are they thinking that, Santos grits out the decision? I was kind of just fooled by what the bookies would be thinking there. But old man fight, got to go with violence.
Yeah, like I don't know. I don't know. Do you think we'll ever see another 40-year-old lightweight fight in the UFC again? I hope not, but I know that it's funny. I know that BJ Penn, the last time that we got the closest to this was BJ Penn, Clay Guida, and Clay Guida was like 37 then. So hopefully, I mean, they're going to run out of how many other 40-year-old lightweights? There can't be any unless Darren Elkins. Oh, that's
How old
Darren.
is Lozon?
He's got to be 40. Yeah,
Yeah, you get Lozon in there with one of these guys. It's not out of the realm.
I think I got it. I think Darren Elkins, Clay Guida. I know Darren Elkins is a featherweight, but that just
and they both are at alpha male, I think.
Yeah, those guys probably train together, but that just sounds like a classic, just pure old school UFC veteran old man fight.
I'd sign up for it.
Yeah, so that was just classic fight night violence. And then this next one, you want to talk about fight night violence. This was 2 guys who were coming off having their limbs contorted in their previous fights, with Jamal Hill taking on Jimmy Crute, and Jamal Hill pulling off a pretty massive upset here, coming through as a plus 170 underdog. The first round KO, TKO, KO cashes at plus 250. Inside the distance cashes at plus 260. The under cashes at even money, about plus 103 ish. And then fight goes the distance, no, minus 300. $100 better now, who's back Jamal Hill on the inside the distance prop. Since his UFC debut in 2019, has now turned a profit of $485 in that stretch. He's 5-1. His only loss is his previous fight, where he had the arm and the shoulder injury there. So and all of his other wins are stoppage wins. This guy, kind of got right back on the horse there with a win. What did you see? What did you see in this one? What did you have?
Yeah, so this is going to be one of those spots that haunts me, that I didn't get this on my track record. I picked Jamal Hill to win this fight. In terms of my official prediction, I had Jamal Hill second round TKO. And man, it didn't last that long. I thought that Jamal Hill on the feet here would have a pretty sizable advantage. He's, fast. He cuts decent angles. He's got long punches, and he's kind of awkward. So, I think that it's going to be hard for people to get a good read on him. And, Crute got set on fire by Anthony Smith in his last fight with the jab. with pretty basic kickboxing. So I felt like Jamal Hill was going to have some success. Didn't expect it to be so early in the fight. I thought he was going to deal with some adversity and get taken down. And ultimately, my regret here, what I was writing down during your intro, was throw out interviews, man, because I was kind of, scared off of Jamal Hill's side here because he mentioned that he was dealing with some injuries in camp and whatever. And so maybe if it was a longer fight, that would have been borne out and we would have seen that. But yeah, ultimately, just regret that I didn't get the Jamal Hill money line bet down. Live market, I saw plus 242 or plus 242 on Jamal Hill inside the distance. Had to take that. So I got in on that line. I was very happy about that. Also got in on Jamal Hill round 2 and round 3 KO. It was that kind of night for me, but I still overall profited on the fight and was glad that I had a decent enough read there. But yeah, I think light heavyweight violence is like my best predictor, and I don't think that the fight doesn't go was like minus 300, but I also thought that was like a pretty sure thing. So it was in most of the parlays that I had for today. But other unfortunate events from the prelims caused those to crash.
Yeah, I had a full unit on the under in this fight, and I thought that under 1.5 rounds at plus 105, and I thought that was, I was quite comfortably confident about that. I didn't want to double down because I was very confident that there was no chance that this fight was going to go the distance, but I wasn't going to double down if I was already on that under. I wasn't going to, compound a loss by being also on the no there. But yeah, I mean, Jamal Hill, it just seems like, yeah, you said the thing about with the way that Anthony Smith was able to just take Jimmy Crute's legs apart. I feel like, Jamal Hill, you mentioned the thing about the interviews. Interviews are really good for content and really good for like creating a talking points, but a lot of the time, based on my experience, you can almost never use what they're saying in the lead up to fight, either for or against them. Sometimes people sound, very, look at someone like Rose Namajunas, like she sounds rarely ever overly confident in the lead up to a fight and then ends up starching her opponents. And Jamal Hill, he just seems like even before the fight, he didn't even look like he wanted to be there, and then that step in, just the perfectly timed counter, just a thing of beauty. And then to call out Paulo Costa, like just this guy's thinking 3D chess here, just to think of Paulo Costa moving up to light heavyweight, wanting to take a crack at a ranked fighter in Jamal Hill. I mean, I think
he fucks up Paulo. I think he fucks him up. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think he would fuck him up.
I mean, I'm not even gonna doubt you. I'm just gonna not doubt that's an amazing fight. You know what I mean? Like, the thing about Paulo Costa at light heavyweight is that I think that he might be able to show more of his, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, because he'd be forced to use more of his grappling. And I feel like a guy like Jamal Hill, especially based on how he, was against Paul Craig, that might be a bad matchup just because of the size. But I'm not backing Paulo Costa in any fight, basically, unless it's like in Bellator right now. So yeah, I would probably be on Jamal Hill in that matchup. But just the cojones to come in and call out that fight and to match make that. And then he also called out who was the other guy that he called out? I forget his name, but he had another call out if Costa wasn't gonna come in there. So Jamal Hill, he's making moves, and I thought, the light heavyweight division, there isn't really that much going on. So if somebody wants to make a case for a top 5, to come in and put their name on, to end up being a headliner in one of these fight night cards, I thought Jamal Hill really did a good job of, putting his name out there. Now with another big stoppage win, I know he has the win over Kitson Abreu that was taken off of his record because of the marijuana, which is now, should be redacted because of USADA going against that. But either way, he's got 4 stoppage wins in 5 fights. And I think sky's the limit for Jamal Hill, especially with this kind of thin light heavyweight division. So yeah, that brings us to the co-main event. And this one was pretty good. Not my high spot. This is a super entertaining fight, but definitely one where I took 2 big L's. Rafael Fiziev takes out Brad Riddell as a -120 favorite. 3rd round TKO standing wheel kick. Fiziev by TKO +350, inside the distance +335, under 2.5 rounds cashed at +185 by 10 seconds actually, with the fight ending at the 2-minute and 20-second mark of the 3rd round. And fight goes the distance, no, cashed at +260. And what did you think about this one?
Oh, it absolutely brutalized me, man. This was a fight that I was excited about. Did my tape study, came out of it feeling like Brad Riddell was going to be in a pretty good position here. And wasn't the fight that I expected. I thought that Brad Riddell was going to be able to improve as the fight went on. He's a fighter that tends to build a little bit into the fight. I thought he looked a little stiff and a little rigid. I thought that, a few times he kind of threw lunging low kicks to close the distance that created a lot of damage and some pretty easy intercept encounters. And I didn't expect that. It just looked like a little bit of a underperformance from Brad. But that being said, Fiziev looked great. And I wasn't one of the guys who was saying that Fiziev is a bomb or something like this. I just thought that Brad was going to be a little bit better. I've had a lot of success in some contender series fights, backing guys who are going against like a coach, somebody who's like, a figure of authority to them if they're a younger guy. And I kind of thought that was the dynamic in this fight, where the young lion who's been learning under Brad Riddell was going to get the vet lesson. And, instead it's Fiziev who just looked a little more dynamic, a little more durable, which surprised me. Given his track record in the UFC. And his cardio looked a little bit improved here as well. So I thought that he made a really good account of himself. I thought that Brad would be the one to come on late. I had a Brad Riddell round 3 ticket, and it goes the other way. So largely the fight I expected in terms of, Brad being the one to mix in the takedown attempts and having some success. Kind of stunned when he abandoned it. Granted, Fiziev was holding good position, but thought that he could have made a little bit more judicious use of that position. And ultimately spent a lot of energy for no avail there. So poor performance from Brad overall. And I might have to reevaluate where I think of him in this division, because I thought that, he was going to have some success in the fringe top 10 of this division. And it looks like now he's going to be on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I mean, as far as evaluating him goes, I think that this is kind of it's kind of hard to evaluate him based on this, because this is just a weird matchup with a guy who's got a similar style to him, based on somebody that, he's known and he's trained with, kind of developed skills with. That's always a very odd dynamic. So I think I would backpedal just a little bit on, evaluating him against other fighters, just because this is a really weird matchup. But as far as Fiziev goes, wow, I thought, something to think about. Bobby Green seems to make fighters better. Every single time that Bobby Green fights somebody, and just in the past 2 years since the pandemic era, I feel like guys who have fought Bobby Green have just gotten better in their next fight. And I thought that Fiziev showed that, very explosive, and just that swagger, kind of just not letting his, when Riddell would land on him, he just didn't let it show. And it seems like Riddell, as good as he is, he kind of lacks that explosiveness that Fiziev had. and he's kind of was just matching or just a little bit less than what Fiziev was putting out. And he just always seemed to be answering back. And I say that with all due respect. It's just my perspective through my bias or whatever. But it feels like every time that I back him, even in the fights that he's won, he just has this style that's kind of just this tit for tat answering back, you know, kind of just playing to the pace of his opponent. And I thought Eugene Behrman in the second round, in between rounds, kind of got to him. I didn't know what was said to him, but he kind of came out different. He kind of was starting to lay it in a little bit more in the beginning of the second round, extending his combinations a little bit, trying to put his fingerprint on the fight a little more, trying to dictate the pace. And then Dean Thomas said it best in between rounds. He said the exact same thing that you said. He looked stiff, and Fiziev looked way more relaxed, way more like he wanted to be in there. And then right as he said that, ironically, Riddell did a really good job of starting to mix his takedowns with his strikes, did a really good job of mixing that in with his grappling. And then by the time we got to the third round, he was doing that, but it seemed like he was starting to get a little bit predictable. And then with Fiziev, that side range to the side, that step aside range that he has with that standing wheel kick, and Riddell was just finished. Like, say what you want about Herb Dean. That was a spectacular high level stoppage, because, you know, with how good Fiziev is in close, Riddell was injured, and he was going to get more injured after taking that head kick. So that was just a phenomenal stoppage by Herb Dean. And yeah, I don't know. The thing about Fiziev is he's got a weird, really striking heavy style, so it kind of doesn't mesh well right now with what's going on in the lightweight division. But this guy, you know, he improves now to 5-1 since his UFC debut in 2019. He's turned a profit of 3.46 units on the money line in that stretch. And you know, the one win that the one loss that he has, kind of, to be honest, you know, just uncharacteristic of him when he was first coming in. Beyond that, he's had some just really good performances. Like I mentioned, the one against Bobby Green, the Moicano, that, you know, he's getting better and better. And now I feel like he's absorbing these, you know, the traits of the guy that he's beaten, because I really saw a little bit of Bobby Green in him in this fight against Brad Riddell. And really surprised me. I thought Brad Riddell was going to show that, you know, kind of that veteran, you know, tinge to his game, and ended up being Fiziev. Yeah, what did you? Any other thoughts you have on this one?
Yeah, man. I was just gonna say it reminded me of the Will Brooks Michael Chandler stoppage, where he's like calling a timeout for himself. That's when I knew it was over, because Brad has this like weird ability to get hit with a nuclear missile and then just go and like be right back to where he was. But that catches up to you eventually, you know. And I saw somebody put out he's never been knocked out in kickboxing, boxing, or mixed martial arts until tonight. And so I've seen a lot of instances of Brad getting touched on the chin, shaking it off, and moving forward. And, you know, can't do that forever. I think that just caught up to him tonight and took a hard shot. And there was no blinking out of it. It was all over.
Yeah. And he absolutely telegraphed it. And I feel like it was just, I don't know. It was one of those like passing of the torch moments where you could just see the fight slipping away from Riddell more and more. And Fiziev was just, you know, starting to take control of it. And those little exchanges, they were just wearing on him more and more. It just seemed like it was unfortunate, because I had fight goes the distance, yes, in a parlay. And I thought, you know, this is, you know, I had Brad Riddell, and it seemed like the fight was slipping away. But, you know, hopefully we can just get out of this, get to the decision. But sure enough, nope. And the over backers as well, because they had 10 seconds at 2 minutes and 20 seconds into the third round. If he just waited 11 more seconds, if Herb Dean had, you know, one of his signature question mark stoppages there, the over might have cashed, but no. Luckily too, because again, Fiziev so good in close against those injured, like against someone dazed like that. We've seen what he's done to other guys. So yeah, props to Herb Dean for stepping in when he did. But yeah, another pretty interesting. Do you have any thoughts as far as matchups go with him in lightweight? It seems like almost he's got a good enough name, I think, that especially in Europe and in Russia, that he's starting to become like a legitimate needle mover. And I kind of feel like anything like top 6 or down is doable. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm just pulling up the lightweight rankings now to see, kind of the names that are in and around the space. Man, I'd love to see Fiziev and Joel Alvarez. I know they just announced the Joel Alvarez fight. That guy, as far as I'm concerned, shouldn't be ranked in the lightweight rankings until he makes the weight class in the UFC, for Christ's sakes. But, I do think he's a good fighter, and that would be a fun one in terms of the striking prowess. Joel Alvarez has been showing off the striking a lot in his recent fights. I think that would turn him back to a grappler fast if he's fighting Fiziev. But I also think, Brad Riddell, I think, is an interesting question. Where does he go from here as well, coming from the 12 spot in the rankings? And, I think Brad kind of shines in that anti-grappler role. He makes people work really hard. He's pretty stubborn, and he could punish people in the short burst that he gets. I think that's where he shined in the UFC so far. And so I kind of thought that in a striking battle, he would fare really well, but maybe let's get him back in there with a grappler. I kind of like that Gregor Gillespie fight for him as a measuring stick of what he could do. So that's another name that comes to mind, but a lot of these guys seem to be booked in the lightweight rankings right now. So might have to let a couple other fights shake out and get some winners and losers to look at.
What about for Brad Riddell, Thiago Moises, who just took that loss to Joel Alvarez? That might be a
I think
decent
that's a
bounce
fun one.
back spot. Yeah. And then like as far as Fiziev goes, a lot of these guys are booked. What about Dan Hooker? I know he's just coming off the loss with Makhachev, but that actually makes quite a bit of sense. Hooker and Fiziev.
I don't think Hooker wants that, but
no,
yeah,
I don't think so either. But
I would like to see that. I think
that would be a
great
fun fight.
That would be I mean, this man Dan Hooker can't catch a break in the matchmaking either. Basically had Dustin Poirier on ice skates and hasn't had a ton of easy opportunities since.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll talk about that. That I just feel like that seems like that's one of those fights where you put out in like Australia or in somewhere in Eastern Europe on one of those fight island. That's a perfect fight. Fiziev and Hooker. I feel like that would draw quite a bit, and then also RDA would. It seems like quite a bit of a jump up, but RDA and Fiziev might be doable. I don't know if he would take that fight though, to be completely honest.
RDA, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be RDA. He's fought such a gangster schedule too. If anybody deserves to be like, guys, nah, it's RDA. He should be waiting for a Conor fight or something like that. I think that's more appropriate for him.
Yeah, or maybe like maybe we'll see him pull up in like a catchweight bout or something, because it seems like all these guys are booked. Or it also seems like some of them. The thing about lightweight is all these guys have built themselves up so much of a name because of the division getting held up by the Khabib and Conor and all that. That almost the top 10 of of lightweight are all legitimate names. You got Gregor Gillespie, pulling up at number 10 and Conor McGregor at number 9. It's kind of hard to be making matchmaking from then on. So yeah, it's super interesting at lightweight, super intriguing as far as matchmaking goes. And then, the most intriguing division, I guess, of the entire weekend got even more intriguing in the main event as Jose Aldo pulled off the upset victory over Rob Font, cashing as a plus 125 underdog. He came through as on the unanimous decision, plus 275 cash on that prop. The over came through minus 135 over in 4.5 rounds. In the yes, fight goes the distance, yes, minus 135. And Jose Aldo finally gets over the Conor McGregor hump and improves to 6-5 since losing his featherweight belt in 2015, and turned a profit of 1.18 units on the money line in that stretch, in that 11 fight stretch from I believe it was Frankie Edgar was the fight that he had after McGregor. He was in
UFC 200.
He was in a brutal stretch where he was on, at one point he was I think it was like 2-5 after the McGregor loss or something like that. And now he's pulled off these. Yeah, he was 2-5 or 4 fights in a row or something like that. But he was not in a good run. And he finally gets over 500, 6-5 with this win over Rob Font. And yeah, I don't know. I'll let you share your thoughts first. We kind of talked about this one yesterday or this morning, and it kind of played out. It kind of played out how I thought, but it just kind of swung back and forth. Give me your thoughts on this one.
This one, I would say there was a lot of good and a little bit of bad from a betting perspective, but I just have to tip the hat to Jose Aldo. Legend, freaking love watching the man work. I tweeted after the fact I should have mortgaged my house on the Jose Aldo money line. Even though it was a little bit sweaty at times, even though he got his face jabbed up, the guy is an absolute warrior. I felt like his combination punching, I felt like the body work, and I felt like the leg kicks were going to be the difference makers here. I also thought that he would be opportunistic in the grappling department. I did think his his cardio would be able to hold up over 5 rounds. I know a lot of people had concerns about that. I thought that if Font was to win this fight, he was going to have to build his way towards a late finish. I thought instead, he kind of tried to empty the tank a little early. He was swarming Aldo, trying to put a ton of pressure on him. I get where he was, I get the idea behind that game plan. Just think that it was, I feel like it wasn't the best put together game plan, if I'm being frank. I felt like the way to approach that fight is to ease your way into it, to not absorb a lot of damage early. That Aldo's going to tire out after 3 rounds, with all due respect, again, to the legend. That's just what it is. Andre Pederneiras is yelling at him in between the rounds, take this one off, move backwards, like come in and come out when you're ready. And that's the kind of thing you have to expect from him. At this point, he was always a cardio manager, a fight manager. And I felt like Font didn't approach this like a cardio manager. He approached it like a berserker. And then he didn't have the stores to go. He was like pulling guard, in some of those instances on the failed takedowns because he was tired. And I also think that's attributed to the body work. I think, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I think Aldo had many opportunities to finish. And probably could have, honestly, and didn't. He says after the fact, I wanted to prove I could go 5 rounds. Every fight doesn't go to decision, and under 4.5 rounds backer, that's like, just vomit inducing talk. And it was really disgusting for me as my track bet here. My prediction article, I glowed over the fact that I thought Aldo would win the fight. And I didn't get to the window with a tremendous bet, and I certainly didn't get to the window with a tracked bet on Jose Aldo this weekend. And that's a big regret for me because I felt like he was the side. But I kind of let the line get the better of me here. And what I mean by that is I saw that I missed plus 150 and I'm like, it's plus 125 now. Am I just chasing the line movement? Am I chasing steam here? And it was still a good bet at plus 125. It was an excellent bet, as a matter of fact. And so I regret that I didn't trust my read enough there, but I'm proud of the read overall. I thought that this was how the fight would play out, and I thought that Aldo could win it over 5. And the king of fucking Rio, he stands again.
Yeah, he does. it's super frustrating. Like, I totally agree with you. He kind of Aljamain Sterling himself. It was very akin to Aljamain Sterling when he fought Peter Yan. He came out way too hot, and I thought it was just a bad move. And it's kind of the second time that he's done this, because he did it against Cody Garbrandt, but it worked out against Cody Garbrandt. The thing is that, you know, the way I had Rob Font in this fight, and I had fight goes the distance no, and this is now the second time where I've had a big fight goes the distance no bet in a Rob Font fight, and it just seems like, I don't know, he's playing the game where he's playing up to his opponent's competition, but he's just not quite there. And then Aldo is doing almost the exact same thing, but in a different sense. And you know, it ends up being, it's flat-footed Aldo against the fleet of foot Rob Font, but Rob Font gets caught at the end of these rounds flat-footed, and that's when Aldo really starts to get into his groove, and then that's when he starts to do the damage, so that when he comes back into the start the next round, Rob Font isn't as fleet of foot as he was to start in the previous round. So he definitely looked like the damage was, you know, wearing on him. And it just, Font's game plan seemed to be to just throw whatever was working and just clog up those lanes with volume and just try to nullify Aldo. But I mean, once you get out there in the ether, it's like what you see is what you get. And when it comes to going out there, you know, and to see who's the better man, you're against, you know, I'm going to lean towards the former two-time featherweight champion if we're going, you know, who's the better man out there in the ether. And once again, it just seemed that Aldo, I don't really know how to describe it, but he has this way of like LeBron Jamesing his way through fights, where he's resting while fighting, well, you know, and not even that he's, you know, holding, or he knows how to do it now. He's just such a wily veteran that he just knows how to do it. And Font did a good job recovering, turning the tide around a few times, but then Aldo was able to just pull it all the way back a couple of times. Whenever Font was able to get the fight back going in his direction, Aldo was able to land another big either body shot or just another one straight down the middle that hurt Font. And you know, Font was there, but not quite there. And then Aldo was dying going into the fourth, but again, so was Font. And Aldo is just the more wily of the two fighters. And Aldo is just so good at using his grappling and the threat of his submission grappling on the ground. Basically what we've never seen before, in this sense that it's a way to rest and a way to kind of, like I said, LeBron James his way into resting while playing or resting while fighting. And he just uses the threat of submissions, the threat of his grappling on the ground to evade, to get his opponents to just kind of tire themselves out. And Font did everything he could not to be finished by Aldo there at the end of that fight. And one thing I will say, what did you think about the scorecards? You know, two 50-45s. I didn't see the fight 50-45. Did you?
To be honest with you, man, I was freaking out during that fight. I was not scoring it objectively at all. I was Aldo, you know, there was Brazilian flags flying in my home, all sorts of craziness going on here. So I can't say that I was giving an honest, fair look at the fight. But with that being said, I did feel like, you know, there was just these punctuating moments in every round that made you feel like Aldo had taken back control right at the end, I felt. And, you know, Aldo's one of these fighters that proves you can't just look at a stat line on a fight and figure out who won.
Yeah.
Because it's about the impact of the strikes, but it's also about, you know, when you see Rob Font get visibly wobbled, stumbling all over the place, it's about how you react to the shots. And I felt like Aldo, everybody was talking about the power difference. Coming into this fight, the power metric supported Font having slightly more power than Aldo. I think the difference was this is 135 pounds. Aldo, we have a limited sample size of him at this weight class, but he's been able to hurt people and get respect, kicked Peter Yan off his feet with the leg kicks. Like, he can generate a lot of power and be impactful at this weight. And I think that Rob Font, he's one of these guys who's big, tall, long, that there's a lot of value to that, but it also means that you've got, these extended limbs that are big targets, and that are, you've got to think weaker as a result of being less muscled. Like, Jose Aldo is like carved from stone at 135 pounds. And I felt like people had this impression of Rob Font, going to just be able to touch him at distance and not get touched back, because he was doing that to Cody Garbrandt with like a 6-inch reach advantage. And I was like, Jose Aldo has like a 1-inch reach deficit here, and he's fought with that kind of reach deficit in many of his fights. So what's likely to happen is that he's going to hit him at the end of his range with the body shot returns, with the counters, and Rob Font gets stung on that counter return. He's a little bit reactive. Like, he's not the fastest guy. He thumps. And so I felt like he did, lump up Aldo, especially with the jab, because that's what he leans on all the time. I thought when Font committed to the uppercuts, he had much more success, but there wasn't enough of that. He just couldn't get in behind the jab effectively enough. Aldo, for as flat-footed as he is, Font likes when people retreat and reset all the time. He does not like when they hold ground and punch him back effectively. And it's now how many Brazilian guys who hit the body and kick the legs that have, turned off Rob Font. That was my theory coming in here, was that Aldo would be able to replicate the success of Lineker. And even, if you look back at the Ricky Simone fight, Simone hurt him to the body more than once. And I did not hear a lot of people talking about it in the lead up. Rob Font's just a little bit soft to the body. So I felt like Aldo was so smart to kick the body 3 times at the open, really set the tone there. I thought Rob Font had a pink belly, 30 seconds into the fight, and then he went back to it with the body shots, but he didn't get over committed to any one attack. He mixed it up. And, if you had to say, like, what adjustment should you make here, which I don't think the New England Cartel is like the best in-fight adjusters out there. If you look at that fight in particular, man, I thought Aldo made the smart adjustments every time. Font did not. And so he kicked him off his feet when Font started to have success in the 3rd round. And it just shows that vet savvy. Jose Aldo, bet against him at your own peril, man. That guy's a stud.
Yeah, like just the way that he lets the fight come to him. And I thought that it was pretty evident that, that wasn't going to work, pretty clearly. Like, it was just one of those things where it was so weird to see both guys trying to implement their, the way that they wanted the fight to dictate. And, Aldo was just able to continually he had more ways to bring it more into his favor. And I feel like Font just needs to work on staying more active in the pocket and staying, if he's going to play that rangy game, he has to stay rangy all the time, all throughout each minute, each second of each round, or else it just doesn't work. And especially, I feel like if he just stayed a little bit more, had a little bit more movement, and obviously, it's easy for me to say it, I'm not the one fighting, but just the way that in this style matchup with Aldo was, he clearly had the advantage in the striking matchup when Font was flat-footed, and when Aldo was, in that more traditional boxing stance, where Ed's Font was, moving pretty, he was mobile, but like I said, at the end of the rounds, Aldo was catching him, and it was just adding up. And yeah, it's so many crazy things with Aldo. Like, it's got to be TJ next to him, and there's really not anything else that it could be other. Like, it's got to be TJ, or Sandhagen, but I don't even think he needs to get basically the number 2 guy.
He's on a 3-fight win streak now. It's got to be TJ.
Yeah, but the problem is that TJ might be out for a while, so it might be one of those cases where he might have to take Sandhagen because Sandhagen's healthy. So unless Aldo's willing to wait, which I honestly don't know if he should, because he's getting old. Although I will say this crazy thought: Jose Aldo is younger than Francis Ngannou, which just blew my mind when someone said that to me the other day.
That is crazy, man. But
Yeah,
this is the thing I was going to mention before we get off it. I just want to give the credit to Rob Font, because this guy started fighting when I think his first amateur fights were when Jose Aldo was like well into his career in the UFC. Like, this guy, Rob Font, has closed the gap considerably. Have you seen somebody take down Jose Aldo and look effective? Like Chad Mendez, national runner-up in the NCAA at 141 pounds, tried as he might for 2 fights and could hardly get this guy to his butt for a second. And, granted, there's got to be some diminishment in the Aldo takedown defense, but still, man, for Christ's sakes, like, Rob Font has closed the gap. He regarded like 10 times against somebody who's much more proficient and well-trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, even from really horrible positions. Like, Rob Font didn't quit on himself tonight when a lot of guys would have and could have, and just given up the neck. Like, at the end there, when he's in the choke, 9 out of 10 guys are like, fuck this, and they just give up. The guy is a fighter through and through. Just was in there with a better guy. It happens sometimes, but even for a New Yorker, I got to give this man credit. Rob Font, he fought his heart out, and nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, like you could tell for Rob Font at that moment when Aldo was cinching in that choke, you could tell that Rob Font was like, I don't care if you 50-43 me, you are not, and you're not finishing me. I'm not letting you choke me out. And you could see just all of his might he was just so relieved when he was able to break that and cinch out of that choke at the very end. And then
the little victories.
Yeah,
little victories.
I feel like that's how he was content, like, to even stay in the octagon to want to chat after, because for him to have gotten finished by Aldo there very late in the 5th round would have just been brutal. It would have been devastating. But the thing about Font, I'm looking at the rankings now. This loss doesn't honestly hurt him, because he lost to Jose Aldo. Like,
he moves 1 spot down.
Yeah, and he lost to Jose Aldo. It doesn't even matter, like.
What I'd like to see? Pedro Font rematch. Run it again. That's what I'd like.
I think that it's got to be. I feel like Font will now likely for sure get the winner of Pedro and Dominic Cruz, right? It's got to be, there's no other. I don't think there's any other option. I mean, Dvalishvili is a pretty interesting matchup. I know that there's some history between those two teams, but even then, I feel like Font. If I'm Font, I go for lower. I'm going for lower because I want to get a win. And a guy like, Pedro's doable, win or lose, and then it's the same type of thing where you're fighting a legend in Dominic Cruz. And besides that, I think he's got it made in the shade. Like, he can pretty much pick his matches in this crazy, the top 15 in bantamweight is just absolutely insane. You could fit, you could have 45 guys in a bantamweight tournament in the world right now, and you're having hard pressed to think of a bad matchup between those 45. So the bantamweight is just crazy, and this, we don't even have a legitimate title holder right now, albeit, Aljamain Sterling commenting on Jose Aldo, and it's just so. We already saw Aldo and Peter Yan, and that fight was so much closer than we remember it. Like the first 3 rounds of Jose Aldo and Peter Yan were pretty close until it wasn't close at all anymore. But
that's a Yan fight, huh? That son of a bitch.
Yeah, it's it's pretty interesting what you do with bantamweight right now. And then, like I said, Jose Aldo, it's either wait out for Dillashaw, or I think they're, I don't know, because who's, you know, I guess we were waiting for Peter Yan versus Aljamain Sterling, that matchup to ultimately happen. So yeah, if I'm Aldo, I'm kind of just, you know, putting the pedal down and being getting whatever I can get. With me saying this, it just sounds like we're probably going to see Aldo versus Sanhagen, just based on the probabilities of everything, and both of those guys probably wanting to fight sooner rather than later. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw Sanhagen Aldo in like March, like UFC 272 or something. Uh, yeah. All right. So let's talk about, before we go, let's get into next week really quickly. We got a pretty crazy, you know, I got to say, this is definitely for people who have followed on this channel and, you know, my work on other channels. This is like my ultimate. This is my two favorite fighters. I mean, I would say with Oliveira, my, you know, favorite fighter right now, and then with Poirier, my favorite fighter of pretty much all time, going at it. Lightweight belt, finally a chance for Poirier to get the undisputed gold, second chance for him, and then Charles Oliveira really to, you know, solidify himself, his first title defense in this one. Poirier comes in, is like a minus 165 favor right now, I see, and Oliveira plus 140 on the money line. What are your thoughts on this one?
This is an absolute banger. And, lightweight matchups, they're normally very competitive because you got just like the selection process to get into the UFC at lightweight is tough. And then, like you mentioned, everybody in the top 15 has built up a pretty credible resume. So to rise to the top of that division, to get to a title fight is very impressive, right? Um, I had a wager last time out for Charles Oliveira on Chandler round one, TKO, and Chandler money line at plus 125. And it was because I felt like it was a coin flip type matchup. I felt like Charles could submit him. I felt like Charles could knock him out. I felt like Michael could submit him, and I felt like Michael could knock him out. And I know people might think I'm crazy, but I actually thought that was a really legit attempt on the guillotine from Chandler in that fight as well. Like, Chandler has good skills, and in the first round of a fight, he's just a live fighter. He's got a lot of power in both hands, and he's got just good power from the ground and pound positions as well. Just fought a pretty silly fight, I thought, overall. It stayed in the guard of Charles Oliveira when it was clearly giving him like paranoia of the highest level. So you could see him getting redder and redder in the top position. And when I saw the visual of them in between rounds, I knew my bets were all gone. And I think that, Charles Oliveira gotten better at answering adversity. And, Dustin Poirier, excellent fighter, also can answer the bell. I think he's just taken a lot of damage over the course of his career, been in a lot of really hellacious fights. And I think that in this matchup, some of the tools that he's used to bail himself out in matchups that get tough and gritty down the stretch, like wrestling people to the floor and staying on top. It's not to say it's impossible he could do that here. I just think it's less likely he'll do it comfortably. And I actually think that Charles is the better wrestler in the matchup. Probably not by a massive margin, but he's got a really good frame. He's long. He's got a lot of leverage. He knows how to use it, and he's crafty, right? So if Dustin is like trying to sprawl, then he could try and turn that into, different kind of front headlock entanglements, leg entanglements. But if he's not trying to sprawl and he's trying to push himself back to the fence, Charles is pretty expert at hopping on the back. Not like Brendan Allen at 185 tonight, where he kind of lost that position. Charles is a magician when he gets on the back. And so ultimately, when I watch that Khabib fight back, it just makes me think that this could be a really, really tough fight for Poirier. If Charles is able to get on his back at any point, it seems like he was a little bit panicky in that position. His hand fight sort of fell apart at a certain point. It seems like if you're going to test the mental fortitude of Dustin Poirier, it's not going to be in a blood and gut striking affair. We've basically had that borne out in front of our eyes several times. So unless you're going to off switch him, which I don't think is outside the realm either, Charles has pretty pinpoint strikes, long levers for arms. He hits hard. He hits from different angles. He's gotten more creative with his strikes over time. The Jared Gordon knockout, made everybody think that Jared Gordon is just a complete no chin guy. And he's kind of put a little bit of that to bed. I think that, that has aged a little bit better than people realize. So I think that the impressive win streak of Charles Oliveira is something I can't ignore. The fact that he's walking in with the title belt and he's coming in with the plus money distinction, I can't ignore that. And I think that because he's got more paths to victory in the fight, I think Dustin submitting Charles outside of the fourth or fifth round would be a little bit of a surprise to me, frankly. Whereas Charles, I think he's live to finish this fight in every round, in every position. And I think that, if this fight sees the scorecards, I might have a heart attack. I might have to wash my eyeballs and start betting on a new sport or something. But I think this has violence written all over it. I think somebody is going to be snoring within the first 3 rounds, one way or the other. And I think this is a tremendous treat for us fight fans that watch this stuff week in and week out. We slog through the tough ones to get to fight nights like this, where we're going to have, just banger after banger and punctuated by one of the greatest fights that the UFC could make right now. So let's get it done. 2 guys that have earned their keep, that have grinded and stuck around in a tough division where you don't get easy fights. And they've really put together impressive resumes. I just think that, the public is going to love that Dustin Poirier beat Conor McGregor in his last 2 fights. For me, it tells us a little bit less because Conor's like on the celebrity tour a little bit. But I did think that Conor, had really good moments in that last fight. A lot of people will disagree with me there. I understand that. But I thought that Conor, landed some shots that rocked Dustin and scrambled him a little bit and made him panic a little bit. But when he was on top, he was able to get that comfort back. He was able to put the toes in the cage for just a second and get out of that guillotine. And once he was on top, he made him pay. And I just don't know that he's going to have as many avenues against Charles, where some guys have gotten on top and felt comfortable, but then it ultimately went back to bite them. Ask Kevin Lee. If you go one too many times to that well, Charles can make you pay if you get there once. And he's got those long, really long, gangly arms, man. That's tough to avoid submissions with somebody like that. So unless we see, Charles do a quit job here, I think that it's going to be a very competitive fight where plus 140 looks a little bit crazy hindsight. But that would be my initial thoughts on this matchup. I'm going to tape it a little bit deeper. Thoughts may change after that, but preliminary, I think that Charles is probably the value side, and I like him to win this fight outright.
Yeah, like for me, if we're going by the odds, it's Oliveira all day. As far as who I think is going to win, I can't call it. I honestly can't call it. Because both of these guys have exceeded the expectations so many times that it's meaningless to try to, cap them and to try to say they can't do this or they can't do that. So I feel like if this fight wasn't lined based on like a bookie line, it should be 50-50. But based on just, public perception and the need for two-way action, I see why the line is the way that it is. But you'll never get Charles Oliveira at this price ever again. And it's not even that I feel like he's, the way that you explain that he's crafty, it's just that he's so athletic and he's so dangerous in those positions that other guys aren't. Just go and watch Charles Oliveira versus Tony Ferguson. Okay. Tony Ferguson, supposed to be one of a super high level, grappler, and Charles Oliveira made him look pedestrian. He transitioned on him like it was, like it was training, and he's so elusive in those positions where Dustin, you're right, Dustin finds comfort in going to those positions when he's in trouble. And if he reverts to that, he's going to be in trouble. And just the way that I'm talking this out with you, it seems like there's more ways for Charles to win this fight than there is for Dustin. The thing about it is that we've discounted Charles Oliveira's striking, and he's shown us multiple times that his striking is there. His striking, it's precision. He doesn't have crazy power, but he has the precision, and he times things really well, and he's very he hits you with the shot that you don't see coming. So yeah, I gotta lean Oliveira. Just some numbers here. Dustin Poirier in his last 22 fights, 16-5-1 in his last 22 fights since 2012. He's won 11 of those 16 inside the distance. It's very familiar to Charles Oliveira. Oliveira is 20-8 since 2010. 14 of those 20 inside the distance. Both of these guys, you look at Dustin Poirier inside the distance, 11-10-1 in his last 22 fights, plus 10.6 units on the inside the distance prop. And then Oliveira right there, 14-8 in 22 fights, 9.98 units on the inside the distance prop. Oliveira has gone under the betting total in 15 of his last 22 fights. Poirier has gone under the betting total in 11 of his last 22 fights. You think about both of the times that these guys have gone to decision in their recent memory. Poirier went to decision against Hooker. That was a really, tough fight for him. And I feel like that's kind of, I don't know what it was about him in that fight, because I don't know. There was just something about him. He kind of like broke out of a shell in that fight. He didn't seem like himself in the early moments. And then after getting almost destroyed, getting put on ice skates by Hooker, he kind of regrouped and came out and has looked great in fighting since turning around that fight against Hooker, with the two solid performances against McGregor. But I point to the fight against Max Holloway. I feel like that fight really showed. I think that fight was like probably his best stand-up fight performance. I know that everybody will point to McGregor, the two McGregor wins, but I feel like just he showed everything that he could, just as far as going the full 5 against Max at UFC 236. Then we look at Charles Oliveira. The last time that he went to decision was that fight that I just mentioned against Tony Ferguson, which I think, he's had this crazy run of most finishes in the UFC. That fight that he had against Tony Ferguson, I think the 30-26 performance, that might have been his best fight in his whole career, at least in his UFC career, in my opinion. Apart from knocking out Michael Chandler to win the belt, what he did to Tony Ferguson basically, took the boogeyman persona away from Tony Ferguson piece by piece in that fight. The guy will never be the same after that, at least in my eyes, from what Charles Oliveira, from the person that Tony Ferguson was and what we thought he was going into that fight versus who he was coming out of it, and the person he went into it against, Beneil Dariush. Charles Oliveira broke that man. And because of that, I feel like it just the will and the determination and the heart. It's hard to go against Poirier, but you'll never get that price on Charles Oliveira ever again, unless he fights Habib. Unless he fights Habib or McGregor, and that's a completely different story. But this fight in this landscape, I think, yeah, you got to go with Poirier. And I think, I'm sorry, you got to go with Charles Oliveira. You have to go with Charles Oliveira at that price, at plus money. If it was the other way, if Poirier was getting the plus money, I'd say, yeah, you probably have to go with Poirier. But this fight is pretty much, I think, 50-50. And if you're getting that much of a plus money price at plus 145 on Charles Oliveira, who's one of the best grapplers in lightweight history, period, you got to go with it. And yeah, I don't really, if somebody has a staunch argument that they're saying that they're going in on Poirier, it's just hard for me to, as based on the value. I just don't want to. I wouldn't want to bet 165, and even at like a plus 115 or something inside the distance on Poirier, I just don't see it, because so much of what Poirier does good, Charles Oliveira does better. So yeah, what do you think? Any other final thoughts on that one?
I really think that most of the argument would be based around, a perceived striking advantage, potentially a cardio advantage. All I would mention is that we have seen, I feel like the Kevin Lee fight is a weird fight. If you go back and watch that one, um, Charles looked like he was about to like pull a quit job at one point in that fight. And then he
Yeah.
just like found his way back into it. He like looked like he was thinking about, and then he's like, you know what? I'll work my way back here. I am just concerned. The Paul Felder fight is the other one that comes to mind. If Poirier is able to get him down, the McGregor fight is a live outcome where he's like on top, just swarming him with ground and pound when he's the freshest as well. Dustin's a dangerous guy. He could definitely thump somebody, and he can just drop
Although
somebody. Yeah.
I will say this, you remember how good Oliveira was at evading Chandler when Chandler was going in for those big strikes, when Chandler dropped Oliveira. I feel like that he's good at that weird, like using his opponent's, ability to try to finish him, against them, by like he tries to evade them, and then his opponent ends up getting gassed, and then that's when he grabs a hold of them. He's got that weird style where it's almost like a rope-a-dope ground game. And I feel like that's a live possibility here too, where if Poirier, ends up getting him down against the cage, similar to the McGregor, the end of that first round. If you were back in that scenario, if that's Oliveira, that's not an ideal position in my opinion for Poirier, because one of those strikes misses and he gets that arm. Look at what Oliveira did to Ferguson in those positions. I feel like he'll be able to wrap him up pretty quickly. What do you think about that? Just like if it gets into that ground and pound situation with him, stacking him up against the cage, as I feel like Oliveira, he has, even if he gets in one of those rough situations, I think he has the tools to get out of it. What do you think?
I think he should. And like I mentioned, I do think he actually has made substantial mental improvements. I feel like that was what was holding Charles back. He never lacked for skill. It just seemed like if the fight started going the other way, he might have had the good hammer, bad nail case going on, but seems like he's corrected a lot of that. And, I did take a pretty big bet, 2 units on Oliveira at the plus 145 tag against Tony Ferguson, because I felt like Tony kind of had the mojo beat out of him by Gaethje as well. I felt like that fight was like a life altering fight. Should have been stopped so much earlier. Really unnecessary damage. He was being treated like a punching bag for several rounds, and I know he dropped him with the uppercut at one point. I just felt like Tony was never really in that fight. And it was really costly for his career too. And I thought that it's just been a snowball since then. I did bet against him twice with Beneil as well. I thought the same thing was going to happen there. So, you got the underdog tag with Charles for some reason, and then Beneil is a significant favorite because the secret was out, right? I think that, in this case, Charles Oliveira, like you mentioned, this might be the last time we get these plus money odds, because if he beats somebody like Dustin Poirier, then the secret's out. And, Charles coming in here, if he had been an underdog against Michael Chandler, I'd have bet him there as well. Like you mentioned, sometimes on these fights, we're looking to just play an odds-based perspective. And I feel like these lightweight elite matchups are often coin-based or coin flip type fights.
Yep.
Even when I bet on McGregor against Poirier, the justification in my mind was that the line had moved from minus 300 McGregor to plus 125 McGregor. And on top of that, it's an elite lightweight matchup where either guy could win. So give me the underdog for a small bet. This time, I think it's again going to be an underdog play for me on the main event. And I think if you're getting a champion at an underdog distinction and they have more paths to victory, it's just a no-brainer for me at that point. They're also similar age, slight frame advantages on the Oliveira side. There's just a lot of things that point to him as a valuable bet, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can't get past the point of just you might never see this price on this fighter ever again. And it'll be like, unless he fights Habib, or if we get a crazy inflated line because of the public coming in on if he were to fight like a McGregor. But besides those two scenarios, I don't think, if he wins this fight, I don't think we'll see a line on him like this ever again. Okay, besides that, really quickly, because we'll try to just limit this to one, because there's so many bangers on this fight card next week. Can you think of one fight where you think of a sneaky underdog on next week's card?
Oh, I have been looking at the fight matchups, but not at the odds. So let me go take a peek at the odds here and see where I could find a sneaky underdog play that I am liking.
Let me just throw one at you, just to see
Absolutely.
what I mean. I got. I'll always do this, and this is even just for content's sake, but I gotta go with fading the Sugar Show. I feel like we saw with Paiva against Kyler Phillips. This dude is super tough. He's got a cinder block for a head. He's really, really tough, and I feel like if this fight goes to decision, we're kind of playing that game where there's a chance where, as long as he wins one clear round, you're giving up, you're getting almost plus 300 odds right now on Paiva. I see it plus 270. I would not be shocked if it gets to plus 300 by fight time. All you need is one clear round and then a judge to have a prevailing scorecard to win a fight like that. And O'Malley has had, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he's had subpar opponents, and I feel like this is one of those setup fights where Roland Paiva is coming off a win against Kyler Phillips. This is not a step down. This is a huge step up as far as cans go, and Paiva is not a can. And if he comes out and tries to do the tit for tat game like he did against Montinho, it's not going to work. And I'm not saying that Paiva is going to come out here and start Sean O'Malley, but I feel like there's a case to be made for betting him at like plus 300 if based on the assumption that this fight goes to the decision. And it's the same type of thing. Watch what happened with Phillips and Paiva. It was this, and I had Paiva in that one too, and it's the same type of thing. He's just going to goad you into just a brawl. And I don't know if O'Malley is I don't know. I don't know. I haven't seen personally enough from Sean O'Malley to say that he should be like a -3 something favorite against the type of fighter that I've saw Rolling Paiva, at least in that fight against Kyler Phillips. What's your take on that?
I couldn't agree with you more, honestly. So I did bet Holly and Paiva at, I want to say plus 240 against Kyler Phillips. Very small bet for me, but I thought it was value. And I also had a prop bet as well on Paiva by decision in that fight. So that was a nice cash for me. And, obviously, if I bet it last time, I think it makes a lot of sense to bet again. I believe I might be speaking out of turn here. I think O'Malley and Phillips are teammates
Yeah,
as well,
or
train
they used to
together.
be. Yeah,
Yeah, but it's same kind of scene out in Arizona. I agree with you, that point about Mutino. Granted, it was a fight on short notice. Don't want to ding O'Malley too bad for that. Do think that he has, very plus level striking statistics. That's something that jumps off the page at me on the Sean O'Malley side. However, I do think Paiva is the kind of guy who's hard to nuke. He's got good recoverability. He's shown that he can come back and win rounds after being, basically 10-8'd and killed in the first round. And so I think Paiva's a soldier. He's been on the wrong end of split decisions before as well. But I do think overall, when you look at the value side, it's very hard for Sean O'Malley, who's a primary striker, to justify that -320 price tag, especially against, Holly and Paiva, who may try to look, for a takedown or two, not to say that's, his go-to, but if he gets stung, would I be stunned? No. Sean, it benefits him to be a little noodly in the striking, but it might be a little bit of a detriment in the grappling exchanges. So obviously he's been working on that, going to jiu-jitsu tournaments, that kind of thing. But I think Sean O'Malley could get exposed a little bit in the grappling department if Ali and Paiva decides to take the fight that direction. So who knows, man? I do think Sean O'Malley's good, but he's going to get, a ton of public love here. This is going to be a pretty well viewed fight card, you would think. Probably decent betting volume as well. In terms of betting volume outside the main event, it's like, guys, this is obviously going to be one of the most bet fights on the card. On the side of the favorite, on the side of O'Malley inside the distance, on the side of O'Malley by knockout. So for that reason, fading the narrative is probably just a profitable plus EV play here, which is why I will try and do it. And then win, lose, or draw, I could feel good about it. If Paiva does get nuked, it's a plus 270 ticket. Whereas if Sean, fades down the stretch like he was starting to against Mutino, who really wasn't throwing much back, was just presenting himself as a punching bag all night, with all due respect. So I think that Paiva's going to throw back, and he's not going to be afraid of the name. So I kind of like that shout from you. There's somebody that I'm looking at here. I don't love the measurables necessarily, but Kai Kara France as an underdog, this is an experiment for Cody Garbrandt, dropping down to 125. Seems like it's the right time for him. Got pieced up by Rob Font in a fight where he didn't look all that competitive, but he also gave me some signs that I didn't like in that fight, checked out mentally halfway through, kind of gave up on winning, had to be talked back into fighting by his corner, was doing well, gets hit with some resistance, and he's like back to just skirting the octagon and not looking to win. So that would frustrate me. That would put me off of betting Cody in this favorite distinction. And at a plus 150 tag, Kai Kara France knocked out Rogerio Bontorin, recovered from being in a really bad spot there from a grappling perspective. The guy wants to keep the fight on the feet. He's going to be shorter than Cody here, which could be to his detriment, but he does have a slight reach advantage. And I think that this is going to be a pretty competitive boxing fight overall, where Cody doesn't really mix in his wrestling and grappling very effectively. Normally he gets people down and can't really work up the body. He just gets stuck at the legs. So I don't think that Cody's going to have a tremendous amount of success grappling here. If he does, that would be probably smart for his career. I think the fact that Cody didn't get chin checked in his last fight by Rob Font is giving people some confidence that his chin is good, but I am a little suspect of the chin, especially at 125 here. For Cody, he's absorbed a lot of damage in his career. Hasn't made a ton of progressions as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if the move to Mark Henry is going to pay dividends. And, if it does, it might still take more time for that to play out. It didn't look like it had been fully fleshed out the last time they were in there. So maybe this is going to be the rejuvenation he needs, dropping down to 125. But it's kind of like I have to see it to believe it for me. On Cody Garbrandt, maybe I'm going to wait to weigh-ins to make a play here. This isn't a fight I've taped in depth, but just looking at the plus 150 tag next to, his name, Kai Kara France, that makes me interested initially. And I have faded him in the past, by the way. So it's not like, I'm just like a KKF, fan. It's just, I think this is a winnable matchup for him.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think that, Cody Garbrandt, I feel like if you're betting on a fighter that's, in his 30s, dropping down 10 pounds to the smallest men's, weight division in the UFC, and you're confident in him as a favorite, I think that you have some things that you need to reevaluate, because there's no reason that he should be a favorite of this size in this matchup. This is a pick 'em at best, in my opinion. And Kai Kara France kind of hasn't performed to expectations, I'll say, based on the hype that he had coming in. We one of those city kickboxing guys, but this is a good spot for him, and this is not a good spot for Cody Garbrandt. Based on the number, I see minus 145 at 5 dimes right now, plus 145 at FanDuel. It's Kai Kara France all day. And then another thing, this is another one of those fights, there's not a line on it, but you will probably get plus money on fight goes the distance no in this matchup. And that's one where, small, trying to just trying to capture some variance and using it on my side. I love to bet these types of fights where the whole market thinks it's going to go the distance. And what better way, fading a guy that's dropping down in weight class that has been chin checked before. Both these guys actually.
Both of them. Yep.
Yeah. Cody Garbrandt has been chin checked before, but both of these guys have been, have been dropped. So I feel like if you're getting plus money on fight goes the distance no in that matchup, I think that's a good one. Really quickly before we wrap it up, I just wanted to go back to the Sean O'Malley point, because everybody talks about, for some reason, the Chris Moutinho, he gets a lot of love, I guess for the hair or whatever, coming in on short notice. But it was the fight for me with Sean O'Malley that was against Thomas Almeida that made me be like, okay, there's something up with this guy, because even against Almeida, who is like 5'7", and Sean O'Malley is 5, he listed at 5'11", but he's probably closer to 6 foot. And Almeida was landing at some times, hurting Sean O'Malley. And you look at both of those fights, O'Malley finished both of them, but you look at the times, 3 minutes, 52 seconds late in the third round against Almeida, 4 minutes and 33 seconds late into the third round against Moutinho. That is not going to happen against Raulian Paiva. If it gets into those later phases of the fight, O'Malley is going to be so gassed from trying to finish him that's where you get that's where you have it where you could see it, that O'Malley's just finished and Paiva ends up on top in top position or something like that, where you see, he might have been winning the early part of the third round, but then he's completely gassed. And because he made a case for himself to win the second round or something like that, all you need is one of those, split 50-50 rounds and a clear round in your way, and you're cashing on a plus 300 ticket. And, the thing about it is, just like you said, this is a card that's built for him, and it's a specific matchup built for him. I think it, like you said, it has to do with the, the relation of his team and Kyler Phillips. They probably, scouted Rolling Paiva the same way that they scouted Almeida and Moutinho. And, he picks his opponents. And I feel like one of these times, similar to what happened with Chito Vera, it's gonna go against him. And I feel like this is, I love doing this because I love fading the narrative, and it's good for the bank account when it comes through. But I'm gonna cut this video, and people are gonna lose their minds, and I'm gonna get shit on by trolls for a good week on YouTube. But that's okay, because I do think, and I'm going to bet Rolling Paiva to win that fight. And that, off the top of my head, that's the biggest underdog for me. And before we wrap it up, do you have any last thoughts on that one, on the just next week's card in general?
Absolutely. Well, just to bolster your point a little bit, I don't want to give away too much in terms of, my thought process and everything too early, because I do want to, give a little bit of a deeper look to some of these matchups, give guys full credit and respect. But that being said, Paiva just has a lot of things I would want to see in somebody I'm going to bet against Sean O'Malley. What I mean by that is, I don't think he's going to die on the first exchange. I don't think he's going to be put off by the fact that he's getting hit. We've seen examples of that. And then on top of that, the guy throws more leg kicks than Sean O'Malley does. Sean O'Malley, I'm going to keep saying it because I do think it's true. Sean O'Malley can, have a little bit of fragility in that leg region. I think it's because of his height, his length. I mentioned it in the Rob Font example. I think it's true in all these examples. Moutinho, when he was landing, often wasn't having success finding Sean's chin. He was touching him to the body a little bit. And I think that those are the kind of targets that Paiva will be able to land on here. And I think if he's smart, he'll try and add up that attritional work early and often, because he's probably not going to knock out O'Malley. But if you look at O'Malley's stats, all the things that are beautiful about them, right? He's very accurate. He throws a lot, he lands a lot, doesn't get hit all that much. Okay, all that is true. But the thing that's, also a reality is this guy hits a lot of people and doesn't knock him out. He knocked out the one guy who was well over the hill, who was that? McDonald. But outside
Eddie
of that,
Wineland.
Or Wineland, excuse me. Jeez, they kind of look a little similar.
Yeah.
But I think all things being equal, this is not a great place to bet O'Malley as a massive favorite. That's all I'd say. We've just seen Paiva perform in this odds range, and the market's obviously low on him, but he overperforms expectations. The market is obviously high on Sean O'Malley, and I had an O'Malley ITD ticket last time, and I almost puked. He's fighting a UFC newcomer and puts every shot on him. And I think Moutinho had been finished in regional MMA. So as much as we want to give credit to Moutinho in that spot for being tough and doing all the, hard work of eating the shots, it's concerning that O'Malley can land enough volume to gas himself without finding a finish. I think he's got a 0.8% knockdown rate, and Paiva has like 0.6. So there's no massive gap in power. The difference is we've seen Paiva get rocked and dropped, and we haven't seen it from O'Malley. So everybody's going to think, only one guy could get hurt and dropped here. And I don't think that's true.
The thing about it, like, Paiva might get hurt and dropped, but I don't think he's going to get knocked out cold. And I keep pointing to this. Watch the Thomas Almeida fight, because he was, O'Malley had a significant size advantage against a guy who was coming off eye surgery. He might not even have continued to, you might not see him fight again in the UFC since then. And, O'Malley was not making it look easy against that guy. And if he has that type of performance against Rolling Paiva, who is extremely tough, extremely tough. And like I said, you just need the variance to go on your side. You need a 50-50 round, and you need a clear round, definitive round in your favor, and you're cashing a plus 300 ticket, and it's that easy. And basically that's that's what I want for a big underdog. And I think it's just perfect because we're getting that exposure. He has that the hype towards him. There's a lot of people who just follow Sean O'Malley that aren't even big MMA fans. They're just fans of him as a persona. So we're going to get a little bit of love on him, and hopefully we'll get a bit of inflated line. Even if we get more than plus 300, I wouldn't be surprised. But I will look forward to that. And I'll look forward to UFC 269 next week. We've gone about almost 2 hours here. Thanks so much for tuning in. Like I said, please like and subscribe the video. Hit up the channel. Follow us on Twitter, Almac Odds and Liam Picks Fights. And then combatodds.ca, of course. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. We'll be here. I'll be here next week for the post-fight show, running out a whole bunch of guests. And thank you so much, Liam, for joining me. It's a late one, but it's got to be late for these late events because we're getting ahead of the Sunday rush. So all these people could have some content to look up, and I'll get that Sean O'Malley cut up video for all the trolls to hate on as well. So thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Very much appreciated. We'll have a bunch more content heading up for UFC 269 over at combatodds.ca. And any parting words, Liam?
I'll just say thank you very much for having me on, buddy. The reason we went long here tonight is because we could talk about these fights, day and night. A lot of fun, always entertaining. Love going back and forth with you, especially Al. Enjoyed the conversation and looking forward to another one in the future. So God bless everybody. Enjoy those fights. Hope that you got something out of this and, looking to get back on the horse. Had a tough one here. Going to dust myself off. And, I already see a lot of spots I like. And it's 5 a.m. Why stop working now? I'm going to keep going and till I crash out today. I'm feeling good. And I think I already got some bets I'm going to move in on.
Yeah. I'm going to be going as soon as we stop. As soon as I press end broadcast, I'm going to be going and making some plays because now I'm just itching to bet that Holland Paiva money line right now. So I'll be on that. And like I said, follow us on Twitter. We'll be up. We're always up. And talk to you then. Thanks a lot, guys.